brief introduction, historical context, and I'm going to introduce the speaker and give a little bit about the format of what we're doing. And then Scott will conclude, and then we'll go right into this situation. In 1986, Frederick Hudson, following his tenure as a founding president of Fielding Institute, established the Hudson Institute of Coaching, which is perhaps one of the first professional coaching organizations. In 1995, the International Coach Federation was established, and they also became a major player. In 2002, the academic community entered this fray, and the Graduate School Alliance for Executive Coaching was established. In 2006, the members came together and established a curriculum. At that time, the first programs had formal curricula in more than 24 universities across the United States, and that grew internationally. I was part of that community. I was the director of research. At that time, there was not a single mention of technology other than Skype could be used sometimes, but we don't know how it differs from face to face. For the next 10 years, there was still no technology. But by 2017, digital platforms began to emerge, and so did AI. In 2018, a paper in the Harvard Business Review talked about AI decision making and how it could affect leadership development. In 2020, with COVID, everything blew up. AI chat boxes began to emerge. And then, within the next 5 years, right up to the present, everything continues to expand at increasing rates of change. A couple of weeks ago, the 4th annual NYU Coaching and Technology Summit was held in the city. More than 50 speakers from academic and professional coaching, AI technology, and OD came together. Wrote one person. My biggest takeaway was the evolving use of AI agents in coaching, not to replace the coach, but to deepen the understanding of the client's patterns and potential. The conversations reminded me to think critically about how we integrate technology to enhance rather than diminish the human side of coaching. Today, we're entering the middle of this again. I'd like to introduce a speaker, Executive Fellow Elisa Johnson. Elisa's held professional senior leadership and executive positions with organizations ranging from startup to the top Fortune 10. She's worked in the US, Singapore, Paris, Tokyo, and Seoul. Prior to her current consultancy work, she's held roles as a chief human resource officer. And at United Healthcare Group, she led the enterprise-wide talent and culture strategy for top talent development. In addition to her academic education, which includes the Powerhouse Graduate HR program at University of St. Thomas, she's also a certified coach from previously named Hudson Institute and International Coach Federation. Elisa's joined today with Andrew Brush, her human colleague and co-founder of the consultancy PBJ People. I thought originally PBJ might have been peanut butter and jelly, but apparently it's actually the acronyms of the founders. Also joining them will be their AI colleague, referred mysteriously as Scott. Her topic is what can't be automated. And I think we're looking forward to this with great interest. So, Elisa, you're up. I'm going on
Okay.
mute. The rest of you do the same.
Okay. Well, and maybe you don't want to be on mute so much because what Andrew and I are going to be doing is really creating a conversation. I know that a couple months ago, Bernhard, who is also one of our founding partners for PBJ People, um, he presented a masterclass in strategy, and we are actually going to want to create more conversation as we are in these interesting times here. And so, what we're titling this time together is What Can't Be Automated. Larry, thank you again for just the way that you queued up and provided some of the history of where we've been in the world of leadership development and coaching and where we're at today. So with that, between PBJ and my colleague Andrew on the call, who is also, he has created a startup called Socratics AI, as we are getting more and more into the intersection of AI and leadership development ourselves. So today's conversation is really to start engaging with what we're all experiencing and seeing out there relative to AI. I know Bernhard had mentioned again a couple months ago strategy in the times of AI, and we had some robust conversation about this. Now it's really about through the lens of leadership, what do we need to engage with? Where does leadership go from here if there's so many things that are becoming automated and if AI is taking over leadership intelligence? We want to do some testing of some assumptions with all of you and do some reflection in light of what we know today and knowing that today is actually going to change probably within the next hour or so. What is out there for tomorrow then as we think about leadership? Thank you to all of you who completed the survey. We just wanted to get an idea around people's interaction and understanding and viewpoints around AI. And so 19 people participated in the survey. And so these are the results. So to begin with, the first three questions were really about what's your understanding of AI today? And so it appears that of the 19 people who responded, there's a fair amount of people who are who have, feel like they've got a good understanding of AI. The second set of questions focused on around the impact. So, and what are your feelings about AI's impact? So you've got this knowledge, you might have some interaction. What do you see in terms of the impact it may have? What is interesting, Bernhard and Drew and I were taking a look at these results yesterday and having a conversation. What we found interesting is that in this group, there's clearly understanding. There's definitely we're definitely coming to the conclusion that AI needs to have a specific role. But I think what we saw in this set of questions is the potential to enhance human growth, that there's excitement around that potential with AI. And so that's what we're experiencing here with the fellows, that there is excitement around the AI's potential for enhancing human growth. And then the third set is really about your own engagement that you shared. How have you been experimenting with the AI tools? Are you yourselves even open to receiving leadership feedback or coaching from an AI-powered tool? I think this kind of surprised me as well. There's a fair amount that said, hey, I'm looking at, from neutral to strongly agree. I would be open to that, obviously within the limits. And then I feel equipped to guide others. And this is the space too that we're still navigating, equipping ourselves and then looking at how do we equip others as well. So there's less confidence on equipping others. So that's what came out of the survey results for those of you who participated. Um, this was also interesting in terms of this is just a summation of how AI should play, what you shared as themes in terms of where AI should play in leadership development. So enhancement and support was really clear. It should be used more as a tool versus any kind of replacement for human. There are roles and, the role and limitations essentially is, let's have it be a mirror rather than a map for us. Wisdom needs to stay with human beings. That is also very clear of what came out in the responses. Efficiency and access. And this is what we see a lot in experience too. In my own personal experience, it's great. It's been wonderful when I think about it from a productivity and efficiency tool. Guidance and simulation as well. It's a nice way to be able to do some leadership practices. I can use a machine now to practice with. If I'm going to be doing a presentation, I can practice with this machine. It's going to give feedback to me so I know where to improve and immediate feedback. Informed decision making as well. So in the academia world, what I heard from you is, again, it's a tool. And it's great for being able to do research, look up things quickly, getting back to also some of the informed decision making. So that's what came out of the survey results. And before we get into, well, here, I'm going to just jump to also some of the conclusions here overall, some of the insights based on what I'll be honest with you. I put all of our results into AI and asked what are the insights based on for this group of people, based on what the data was provided on both the quantitative and qualitative. And here's the conclusions that ChatGPT gave me. It's a mirror, not a map, valued for its power to enhance but not replace human development. I guess that's what's pretty common for all of us. Again, it's not to replace human development. It is a transformation of leadership. We do see that based on the survey results that people are recognizing and realizing that it is powerful in sense making and has judgment. And leadership development is really now about co-creation with machines. So it's you've got this intersection of humans, data, and machines all coming together in the space of leadership development. And before I turn it over to Drew, what I'd like to do is just pause here for a moment and get some thoughts and perspectives from all of you around what came out of the survey results. And I'm going to stop sharing here a second. And if I need to go back to that slide, to some of the slides with the results, we can certainly do that. But just wanted to pause here and see if there were any surprises from your perspective that may have come out of the survey results.
Well, I'll jump in just one. Now, I was surprised that I don't know whether I know about AI. In other words, the question is how familiar are you with it, and is it doing what it's supposed to do? Well, the fact is that for me, it's still just a box that I go into and come out of, and I don't know what it really is. I hear a lot of conversation about intelligence, but I also read that it's not intelligent. It's sort of pattern recognition. And even though I'm talking to it, and by the way, when I go to ChatGPT, I always thank it at the end. Thank you for that
Mhm.
response. And it gives me a note back. So, how do I know if I know that it's doing these things?
Mm. Mhm. Yeah, how do I really know that it is doing these things? Roland, was that your hand up or just moving around? Okay, just moving around. Got it. Bernhard, do you want to talk to your response at all of what you put in the chat?
Yeah, not much more than that, right? I thought it was just interesting to see kind of this dichotomy of a lot of excitement and at the same time fair amount of concern. And um, I kind of share that as well, right? Like it's in a way there's this potential to super intelligence to solve all problems of humankind, right? Cold fusion, room temperature, superconductors,
Hmm.
you know, create massive amount of economic value out of thin air. And at the same time, this could go horribly wrong, right? It's to the point that was just made. It's like we don't really know what's going on inside these boxes. So we're creating things that are really, really hard to understand and control. So um,
Yeah, and more, I think we're getting outside of the boxes. We're experimenting more as PBJ and as Trigate.
well,
We're seeing,
the LLM boxes are starting to get agency in the real world, right? And that's where
yes,
I understand what's happening inside the box. It's hard to predict what they're going to do in the real world, and there's a difference between putting text into ChatGPT and getting answers back and having these systems actually have agency and take real world actions, which they're definitely starting to do. So, and I guess that's one thing. And the other piece of it, I think, is to me like the question of AI and do we understand AI? It's almost impossible to answer because this is not one technology, right? Like this is a whole set of interlocking
hmm,
capabilities that build on each other, and we don't know what's in the lab and what we're not being exposed to, and so I could go come out on both sides of the question. I don't understand it at all, and I understand it really well, depending on which vantage point I take.
yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
If I can jump in,
Bob?
I'd love to just echo all of that, Bernard. I'm so afraid of the thing I do not know about AI because that's what's it doing that we do not know and that we'll find out later. It's kind of like with the government's doing something and then you find out later, or whatever that sort of thing is. But I used it recently. I was doing a workshop and I wanted to create a little assessment for on trust so people could rank themselves on a scale of 1 to 10. And I was going to sit there and try to come up with maybe 10 different characteristics of trust. And I said, I'll just get AI to do it. Well, it took less than 3 milliseconds for it to come up
Mhm.
with the most perfect test that I like the 10 items. Now, obviously, there's more aspects to trust than 10. We could probably get to 20 really easily, but I just wanted to keep it at 10. And I was just blown away. It saved me hours of time. But but it was a simple task, like just collate, find the 10 common things that are out there. So my concern about AI as a moving forward tool is if it's just pattern recognition. And this is what blew my mind the other day when I was listening to a podcast and someone said, I want you to imagine this is AI. Hi, response, how are you? I'm fine. You. Like we do that every day. Well, that's all AI does. That's literally what AI does. Is it finds the most common next thing that someone would likely say, right? Or the answer to that. That's my understanding. It kind of blew my mind to realize that we're AI every day because we just get into that pattern. But my concern is that if it is just pattern recognition, everything falls to the middle at some point. Everything becomes average. Or where you got your peak, but everything kind of falls into that center. And I've always been in my career in business, I'm always about the outliers. Like I want to live in this space out here, and I don't want to live in this space. So I'm looking for when what I want to understand about AI is how can I use AI or how can we get AI to be out here and not always here? Not to suggest that this isn't valuable because any scientist or physician is going to go, "Yay, I found the mean, right? Or I found the most. This is it. Fantastic." But if I want to innovate, I'm out here. Then that's where I am.
Yeah, and I think we'll get to some of that experience coming up too, Bob, about being out here a little bit further, because it really is. And interesting that you mentioned too about the government. Um, I actually see organizations taking off with this way more is my experience. around this in multiple industries and how they're using AI and implementing, and for whether it's strategy and leadership decisions as well. Nuri, you have your hand up?
I do. I was just going to add, Bob, I think it's an interesting point about where AI lives on that distribution curve. What I find fascinating as well is not only, as everyone's been saying, we're not really sure what's going on with the LLMs or how the game is being played behind the scenes. What I find more challenging as well is that the game is constantly, the rules of the game are constantly being changed, right? So whether your data is being used, how much of your privacy is being respected when you're putting your tax information into ChatGPT, whether or not OpenAI has decided to use that data or make it widely available for other people, debatable, and the game changes on an hourly basis. So that A is interesting. Also, what I find fascinating is if you all have been using Gemini or ChatGPT, I've noticed an error rate that is like based on factual information that is higher than normal. I put um, uh, into Google a few days ago. We were watching Jurassic Park the movie, and I asked who's the lead actress. It gave me on the same prompt. I just kept repeating who's the lead actress. It gave me seven different names. Four of them were not even in the movie. And so where it's picking up or what it thinks you're asking on very basic things is kind of surprising. And then you can get into hallucinations and it giving you, like just kind of supporting you in the things that you say and all of that. It's also very interesting, Bob, because I think that the partnership, what I'd love to see in the future is AI does the middle part and we do the outliers, so that we can, as humans, still determine where the conversation goes. Because I love that, you as an expert know what those 10 things are and trust. And people will say to me, "Oh, I can just have ChatGPT write me a strategic communications plan." And then I'll respond and say, "That sounds great. And when it doesn't work, please come back, but I will have to charge you a higher fee to fix it." But have at it, have at it. And if you don't know what you're doing with it, let's see what goes, and what it comes out with. So it's a very interesting balancing of understanding where not only how does it work, but what is it telling us and how beneficial and true is it, and how do we sort of like leverage that to make strides for our own benefit? That's what keeps me up at night is how much of it is real.
So, Roland, can we take your question? And then I think we'll move on a little bit further, move us along into meeting Coach Scott here in a moment.
Sure, that's great, and as everybody said, this is a tremendous a presentation. Bob, I think you used ChatGPT in some ways as a thesaurus to get some equivalencies, and that was very efficient. But then, did you decide to use what it gave you?
As a matter of fact, I did. I looked at it and went,
That
that is perfect. It was perfect. I just
you,
reformatted it. That's all I did.
okay, so it that was efficiency in finding words, but you deciding to use it, that was a different that was a different thing. And I think we all need to be cautious about, and this has been said before, about treating AI as one thing. When we've been going to kiosks, we've been using AI. When we were seeing ads for Grammarly, that was AI. So it ain't just one thing. Uh, there's a continuum of cognition, and there's artificial intelligence, and there's probably artificial stupidity at some other place on the continuum as well. So we shouldn't imbue. My concern is not imbuing everything that is AI with great powers. Anyway, good to see
Absolutely.
everybody.
Thanks. Thanks, Roland. Bob, let's get to your question or your a little bit further in terms of around the broadening here. So I'm going to have turn it over to Drew here for discussion on a couple of slides before he takes us into meeting Coach Scott in a moment here. But as we're seeing around where AI is shaping. Drew's been doing a lot of work on this.
So couple things. One, the details of these slides you'll be able to have afterwards, obviously, and click in. I provide some hyperlink to the examples. I won't cover everything here, but well, I do find providing concrete examples helpful is the exact point that AI is many different things. When we say that, it's very broad interpretation, and we don't even have to extrapolate into the future too much, although it's worth worrying about the future. But today, things are happening within organizations, in technology stacks that are worth worrying about right now, right? When we think about implementation of these technologies. So what I've done is pull across like just a couple of traits, could have done several more to highlight what are these traits enabling and what are the examples of them being integrated into organizations and what are some of the risks to those traits. So I think most people know about some of these generative models that are basically built up off LLMs, right? That are able to produce text and image, and in the case you might have seen with Google and now other large providers, video, right? And so I think we know about the problems there. We've mentioned a few of them. They can hallucinate, they can have errors. There's IP concerns, changes the intellectual property landscape. Um, and people are using it, right? Like Coca-Cola is an early example who created their Create Real Magic campaign, which sped up productivity for them from like a matter of weeks to hours in terms of the output of the creative campaign there. And so that's the one we're probably most familiar with. Um, these things continue to become more and more sophisticated as we turn on more and more capability, but also to the point of us not understanding what's exactly going on. One of the mysteries is why is it that when we scale more and more larger these models and add more and more compute, they seem to have more emergent capabilities. One of that has been the ability to get better and better at cloning real voices. So today, and what I'll actually demonstrate later, is you can clone with or without permission, ethically, I would hope with permission, somebody's voice. If you have 30 minutes of their audio, you can get near real-time recognizable, complete, like what we would say outside of the uncanny valley. On just a few minutes, you can get an uncanny representation of them. So you can put this to work by quote unquote scaling intimacy or presence by being able to have, for example, Accenture cloned a CEO for basically an all hands type experience so that it can not only deliver at scale, but also in a customized way in a native language, right? Across 10 languages in that case. You can imagine a world where you could actually just dialogue directly with the CEO on strategy and vision, and assuming an accuracy there, you could have a real-time conversation with the CEO, which changes the way we even think about leadership, I would argue, because now you're having a direct conversation with an agent that represents that experience, right? Um, and then you've probably heard a lot about like coordinating agents and, more of the decision making that's coming into these technologies where you can take entire workflows or tasks and from end to end actually create decision making that historically would have had much more human, direct input. So it's speeding up the decision making, but also on a risk point of view, we don't know if there's goal alignment to that decision making. We don't know if there's drift from that goal over time. And so this is where you'll often hear people talk about human in the loop, right? Like, is there a human in the loop? And at what points is the human in the loop? Because of the incentives of productivity, this is being implemented pretty quickly. An example would be Shopify Sidekick, if anyone's familiar with that. There are agents there which help their customers do things like immediately identify inventory issues, rewrite product copy on the site, automatically trigger these discount campaigns related to customer data they're getting intelligently from their overall tech stack. And at least if you just want to click to the next one. Um, Several other examples. I won't detail all of them because of time, but we have predictive analytics. John Deere is able to predict mechanical failure before it happens, which historically, by the way, is out. We might say that's under AI, but it's more of a machine learning process, right? It isn't historically driven just by LLMs. And this is a good example of there's stitched technologies beyond just stitched together technology beyond just what we think of in LLMs as AI. Um, and then there's creating these human co-learning platforms. Duolingo is using ChatGPT for role playing, and then using the information from that role playing to help inform the human coach, who they eventually could escalate to if needed, uh, to then combine those experiences. And then the biggest point probably on here is, the point of privacy and responsible ethics. Things are moving so fast. Are we actually considering the implementation of the ethics? There's been some efforts around that. You might have heard a lot about the smaller models, which are more efficient and can be run on device. Historically, too, we would have thought of Apple's predictive keyboard capabilities as a early machine learning capability of that doesn't need access to the internet to be able to do what it does. But when it comes to where we're at today, we've immediately turned these models on and connected them. It used to be the concern was, even if we develop these super technologies, we won't let them out in the wild. We'll be very careful about them. We'll create them and we'll test them. But of course, that hasn't been the case. They're immediately created and sent and connected to everything, highlighting the risks that are underneath us. But all of this, I think, does highlight the point that some of the leadership characteristics of the future, we're going to need to discern our ethics, judgment, the ability to coordinate large decision-making trends that are happening across these agents and these emergent properties, and the ability to understand the emergent properties that are coming out of these complex systems.
So we've had the opportunity to have some conversation around our own understanding, our own experimentation. We've broadened out a little bit further than, okay, what's going on in the world? And have, as so many of you have also pointed out, that it's not just singular as we think about AI. It really is everywhere, and we don't even know what we don't know so many times around what is generating things behind the scenes. This is just a question to frame up our thinking about this through the lens of leadership. If intelligence is getting more and more centralized, let's say, around our machines, what does become the purpose of leadership itself? The purpose of leadership for the future, as machines are entering and not just only giving us efficiencies, but really giving us presence in different ways as well. Not going to answer that. It's just a question to put out there for something that I know, reflecting on pretty deeply myself, because I know what I desire to have as the purpose of leadership. But really, again, when it gets to the reality of what technologies are getting developed and what they continue to replace, I don't know that my choice and what my desires are really even a choice down the road. And then why don't we do this? I'm going to skip over this slide. You'll get all of these slides after, but why don't we get into Coach Scott here as I'm looking at the time. I think let's do some interaction ourselves here. So diving into Coach Scott. So Drew, do you want to talk a little bit about Coach Scott here and how he was created and what we might experience here a little bit as we go into some interaction?
Sure. Try not to get distracted. Bernard's chat question. So Coach Scott represents two things. One, just how fast these technologies are and the power behind them. So intentionally, we only spent 20 minutes building Coach Scott. Um, and what we did fundamentally was I went to YouTube. First of all, I got Real Scott's permission to do this. And then I went to YouTube and I ripped the video and audio of a few public conversations that he's had there and content. And I took that and I used a very well-known and popular, probably the leading voice creation platform, 11 Labs. I went to 11 Labs website I turned down a $20 a month or something like this, subscription, and I fed that audio into their platform. And I did that with the intention of cloning his voice. So they have a clone voice feature. And if you, I think I had shared earlier, have like about 30 minutes of somebody's voice, you can get like complete replication. Very difficult to distinguish that from somebody else. If you have like what I had, 2 to 3 minutes, you end up a little bit in the uncanny valley, but very powerful to create right away. So we did that. I put a one-shot prompt in, so meaning just put it in one time, be a coach. Here's Coach Scott, and then was able to spin up a link, and now I can share that Coach Scott with you. So
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to put you into some small groups. And what we'd like you to do is Drew's going to provide you a link for getting to Coach Scott. And so we'll put that link in the chat. And so once you get into your breakout groups, uh, uh, or actually before you go into your breakout groups, get the link that's in the chat box. And then just on your own, you can put in your breakout groups, put your Zoom on mute for a moment, but do your own interactions with Coach Scott and see what kind of coaching he brings to you and what he provides. And then once you've had a moment to interact with Scott, get into your small groups to just discuss. We've put some questions up here. What surprised you? What was useful? When would something like this be helpful in development? But then also what might be missing. So there's a few questions here that we thought we'd provide you in your small group breakouts as you have the opportunity to interact with Coach Scott. So I'm going to stop sharing here a second. And Drew, do you have the link here? Let's
I
take a look.
provided the link, and what you should expect is to wonder if you're in the right place is you'll open that link, you'll get a blue circle background, then it says, say, call AI agent. That's all you should see, no picture of Scott or anything. And then you'll click that call agent, and then you'll have a live opportunity to chat with Coach Scott. And then you can end that interaction, when you feel comfortable, or you can try it over, but basically experiment as Elisa had suggested.
And here's what I'm going to do. I just noticed I couldn't see all of your faces when I was in presentation mode, but I did notice a couple people probably had to drop off, so we're a little bit smaller group. So why don't you just interact with Coach Scott yourselves for a bit, and we'll just come back together, all of us, and have some discussion around those questions. Okay, so feel free to dive in. You can go off camera if you like, and then I'll bring us back all together in a moment here.
For how long should we interact with him?
Why don't you so we're at 9:48. Why don't we say until 9:51 at least? I'll
Okay,
just do a check-in, a few minutes here.
great.
Thanks.
Thank you. I would like further help with how I can use AI to help as being a leader in my organization.
That's a great
Okay, I know you're in your conversations with Coach Scott, but why don't we all come back together? So say thank you to Coach Scott, ending your conversation.
Elisa, he was remarkably good.
He was remarkably good.
We should just start there.
Okay.
Elisa, he was better than the real Scott.
He was better.
I agree.
I don't
That
know. This
was
is
a
where
little
again I know I
borrowed, right? That's
grapple
a
with,
little
can you
borrowed.
replace the real Scott?
In fact, yes. Which Scott do we need now? You know, we've kind of tested the.
That's right. Well, we're always, at least for me personally, I'm always going to want the real Scott. But that being said, with with Drew talking about the short amount of time of putting together this agent, Scott, calling Coach Scott. This is the landscape that we are in today. And so I am curious in terms of others of you about your comments. What did you find either strange or useful, even, or surprising about Coach Scott?
I asked Coach Scott a should question. Should I do X, Y, or Z? And Coach Scott had some problems because he kept asking me for details of data. And I was asking a moral question. What ought I do? And he was not as good as perhaps a real Scott. I've been using chat trying to find out if it ever says, I don't know, or that's a really tough question. I'll have to get back to you. That's something that a human would say. But I haven't found too much of that.
Okay, so your experience with Scott was Coach Scott, definitely in terms of when it came down to some of those deeper questions around the moral aspects.
Yeah, it's
You
data
needed
driven.
more.
Yeah, give me information. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got it all, fellow.
Well, I got the response of, I don't know.
Did you?
Did you?
I asked about, can AI do something? And the response was, that's a good question, but I'm not sure. Can you tell me more?
I think you had the real Scott.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I'm off camera. This is Kevin. I very much with what Kevin had just said. I had asked a question about, developing policies in an intercultural environment that would set the standards on how to deal with issues in LGBTQIA settings. And it just kept on asking me more questions in greater specificity. This is very complex and it has to have more information. Then it asked me more questions and I gave it another answer. Then it said, but it's even more complex. So I never got an answer. It just kept on asking me for more data, more information. And I just felt I was going down a rabbit hole that was really unfulfilling. Over.
Well, that's interesting. That's spoken like a true consultant in many ways,
I was going
Kevin.
to say, running for politics.
The never-ending questions that consultants ask before they can give you the answer, right?
I'd love to chime in here just a little bit to tell you about. So it did it very quickly, right? But there's a lot of controlling that's trying to go on top of these models to influence the behavior. And so to share a little bit more, I intentionally turned what's called the temperature of this model all the way down to be more deterministic and less creative. So it could have been possible that I pushed it all the way up to creative, and it may not have said I don't know, and instead it would have not hallucinated, it would have created an answer to that, which is different than a hallucination. But if you push the determination model up to high, you reduce the error rate of hallucination because you're not giving the model the freedom it wants to respond once.
Andrew, I think in what you just said, you kind of revealed the source of concern that that I and perhaps others have, is that's a parameter of how fanciful or how deterministic the model will be, and that you, as the designer of this particular model, you have the choice. And the builders of the original model put that in as an adjustable parameter. They didn't. If it was really artificial intelligence, they would have limited it more to the deterministic side of that continuum.
Well, I think that Coach Scott has been infected by the consultant speak. I asked Coach Scott, "What? Could you tell me what time it is?" And he asked to borrow my watch.
Wow.
Alyssa, if I could, and I apologize, I have to run to a client meeting that actually just kicked in. But first of all, I want to thank you very much, you and Bernard and everything. Very fascinating, very interesting. I do want to say the question that you have been debating and thinking about, relative to AI that you put on there, and then actually Bernard put an interesting ChatGPT response. I want to say that it's interesting because you're worried as a leader about the intelligence. I really still feel like AI is giving knowledge, not intelligence. Okay, it's what we do with it that makes it intelligent. So I'm not worried about that. And specific to this, I knew we were dealing with Scott Coach, so I didn't go with a complex question, but I got what Bob got, I believe, which was pretty tactical, pretty standard, easy kind of things to what I asked. And I was just about to try and dive deeper to see if I could get something meaty. And we had to stop because we had a couple minutes. So I don't know, but I think it is still, it's being trained, it's in process. And I apologize I have to run, but thank you very
No,
much.
thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mickey. Appreciate that.
Thank
But
you.
what is interesting, as Drew shared, how much time did you spend on this?
20 minutes, whatever, yeah.
Yeah, really, really limited time. So if you would have had more time, if you would have spent a lot more time, I think you would have a different experience as well. Scott, the real Scott, I'm curious about what you experienced. You're on mute here. Oh, there you go.
So hearing yourself always causes you to pause for a moment. And I listened carefully for the distinction in my voice. So I have a lisp with particular words, and I listened to see what I would pick up on. The other thing I was listening for, and frankly, I thought it was pretty good. It sounded like me, so that was actually somewhat gratifying. So thank you, Andrew. I do like Dr. Starr's idea of making me a little taller and a little sleeker and a little faster and certainly a lot smarter. I sent Andrew, or I'm about to hit send for Andrew with a video to see if we can incorporate my visual likeness into this. But frankly, I liked the responses, and I began to potentially inappropriately correlate very quickly words that I'm aware that I say in what I was listening to. So, I was convincing myself that this likeness in voice, that Andrew did a really good job with only a couple of minutes of effort. So I'm sorry I didn't write down the words that I was listening for, but there were a few words that made me think, well, I would say that. So anyway, that was my quick reaction for the group. And thanks for doing this, especially with the good humor that I know all of you bring to this.
And just to add a little bit about the build too, right? How quick. So, some of the concerns we were talking about, how you want the behavior of these things to be. I agree basically that there's a knowledge base under here that's being unlocked through the LLM. But you can control the behaviors of these things on the front through prompting or advanced prompting or certain foundational technologies people might know about or approaches. RAG is an example if people are familiar. But basically what you can do is give specific instructions to these LLM such that it goes to the LLM, it creates a response, and that response is checked against your criteria of whether or not it's a good response before it even reaches the end user. So you could say in your right instructions, hey, it shouldn't do consultant speak, check against that, should do this, that, right? And you can create feedback loops on top of the LLM itself to further direct the behavior. I think the potential implication of this is better mimicry, not necessarily true quote unquote intelligence. But if you would spend hours and get very good at it, which people are doing, and specifically creating products and experiences to do that, you're going to end up, I think, with very good mimicry. And unless you're sophisticated, it's going to be challenging to differentiate that as wisdom from others, right? Maybe if you're an expert, a deeper expert, you'll be like, I see through this. But I think the challenge is you're going to get lots of people who are non-experts going, that's pretty good. It matches where I go and verify information.
All right. Elisa, we've come to the end of our hour. Maybe you could close up a bit here.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for going through this journey with us and having the going through the experience. And I think where I would just end here is I know that Mickey isn't here anymore, but there is an aspect of where there is a lot more intelligence that's already here that we didn't experience in this moment. We just wanted to give a little bit in terms of what is on the surface and what you can do in such a short period of time. But I'm going to close with just this invitation. And Larry, you're the one who provided me with this wonderful paper that was published a year ago here in terms of as AI's integration into leadership becomes a lot more pervasive. And I would even argue it is becoming much more intelligent, and it is a lot more intelligent. And so the question just becomes, we saw Scott. I just guess I leave with this in terms of what can't be automated in you, because I do believe there is a lot that can be automated today that we just don't have visibility to or experience around, but it's there. But as you walk away from this too, what do you believe cannot be automated in you or about you as well? So thank you, everyone, for all of your wonderful thoughts, insights, experiences, and suggestions. So this has been a really great conversation for me.
Yes, and thank you, Elisa, Drew, and Automated Scott for your participation. This will be hopefully edited and available at a later time. And be alert for the next meeting in August. I think it's Kevin. And have a great month, great summer, and we'll see you at the end. Thanks, everyone.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Nice seeing everybody.
Andrew.
Okay, Ron and Larry, how did that work for you?
That was tremendous. I did not get Coach Scott to work on my particular setup. Drew, if you could just send me the link in an email, because it'll disappear when I close up Zoom. I'd like to.
Sure.
I've got some questions for that guy. I really appreciate the amount of effort that you put into putting this together for the fellows. Every one of these presentations that we've had in the last few months has been great. So thank you very much. I know Scott, real Scott, also has gratitude to express, but it's been a nice experience. Larry took this over. I was swimming in the ocean a quarter hour before we got on at noon, so I cleaned up so I could enjoy it. Yeah. So
very nice. Yeah, well done, guys.
Best wishes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for your support. And thanks, Larry. You went off screen, but if you hear this, thank you as well.
I think Jenny is still there from the Institute.
Okay.
And yeah, she'll be the last one off, but you all carry on.
Okay. Sounds good. Take care. Bye-bye.